Elowen, there's something you need to know.
Jane never expected the truth to reveal itself in a hallway. That night she stepped out of a glass elevator onto the rooftop lounge where Varelli Dynamics hosted its annual investor celebration. The venue sat high above San Francisco, where city lights stretched across the bay like scattered stars. Inside the lounge, the atmosphere carried confidence and wealth. Technology executives spoke about new robotics contracts. Venture capital leaders discussed expansion plans. Journalists moved through the crowd gathering quotes for morning headlines. Varelli Dynamics had become one of the most admired companies in the technology sector, and its founder, Kaelan Varelli, stood at the center of that success. Jane attended the event because her consulting firm managed financial oversight for several technology corporations, including Kaelan's company. For her, the evening formed part of professional duty. Still, the company meant something more personal. Kaelan was married to her closest friend, Elowen Maris. Jane moved calmly through the crowd and stopped near the balcony railing. She preferred observing rather than rushing into conversations. Years working in financial compliance trained her to notice patterns others overlooked. A waiter passed with a tray of drinks. Jane accepted a glass of water and turned back toward the celebration. That was when she noticed two familiar figures standing near the far side of the room. Talia Verdun, and beside her stood Kaelan. They appeared engaged in conversation, leaning closer than most people did in crowded rooms. At first, Jane thought nothing of it. Friends often spoke at social gatherings, but something about their closeness made her pause. And for reasons she could not yet explain, Jane kept watching. Jane kept her eyes on them for a moment longer. Across the rooftop lounge, Kaelan and Talia stood close beside the glass wall overlooking the city. The distance between them looked smaller than what most people kept during casual conversation. Talia tilted her head slightly while listening to him. A soft smile stayed on her face. Her hand rested briefly on his arm as she spoke. Kaelan did not step back. Instead, he leaned closer. Jane's brows tightened slightly. In crowded rooms, people often moved closer to hear each other. The music, the conversations, the constant movement made that normal. Yet something about their interaction felt different. Their attention remained fixed on each other, almost as if the rest of the celebration no longer existed. Talia laughed again. Kaelan lowered his voice and said something that made her smile widen. Jane shifted her weight where she stood. She tried to dismiss the feeling forming in her chest. Talia had known Kaelan for years through Elowen. Their friendship circles overlapped often. Seeing them talk at a company event should have felt completely ordinary. But Jane noticed details others rarely paid attention to. Their eye contact lingered longer than expected. Their bodies angled toward each other in a way that suggested familiarity. And when someone briefly walked between them, Talia immediately stepped closer again. Jane looked away for a second, trying to shake the thought forming in her mind. Maybe she was reading too much into the moment. Still, when she glanced back again, she saw Kaelan lower his head closer toward Talia as they spoke quietly. A strange feeling settled in Jane's chest. Before she could process it further, the two of them began moving toward a quieter corridor near the elevators. Jane watched them disappear from the crowd. For several seconds, she stood completely still. Then curiosity pushed her forward. Jane watched as Kaelan and Talia moved away from the crowd. At first their steps looked casual, like two people searching for a quieter place to continue a conversation. The rooftop lounge had grown louder as more guests arrived. Music played near the bar. Investors spoke over one another while celebrating another successful year for Varelli Dynamics. But Kaelan and Talia did not stop near the balcony or the bar. They continued walking toward a corridor leading away from the main event space. The hallway led to a private elevator area used mostly by staff and executives. Jane's attention sharpened. Most guests had no reason to enter that part of the building during a celebration like this. She watched as the two figures disappeared around the corner. For a moment she remained where she stood, holding her glass. Her mind searched for a simple explanation. Perhaps Kaelan needed a quiet moment away from the crowd. Perhaps Talia had a call to answer. There could be many harmless reasons. Still, the uneasy feeling inside Jane refused to fade. Her instincts had guided her through years of financial investigations. She had learned to pay attention when small details did not align with normal behavior, and something about what she just saw did not feel normal. Jane placed her glass on a nearby table. She walked calmly across the lounge, careful not to draw attention. No one noticed her leave the main celebration. Most guests remained busy discussing business deals and investment opportunities. As Jane reached the corridor entrance, the noise from the party faded behind her. The hallway ahead stood quiet. Soft lighting lined the walls. At the far end, the private elevator area waited. Jane slowed her steps. A few more feet forward would reveal whether her instincts were wrong, or whether something far worse waited around the corner. Jane moved slowly down the quiet hallway. The music from the rooftop celebration faded behind her. Only distant echoes of laughter reached the corridor now. The rest of the building felt calm compared to the energy of the party. She approached the corner leading to the private elevator area. Before stepping forward, she heard voices. Talia's voice came first. It sounded softer than the tone she used during normal conversations. Jane stopped. A second voice answered. Kaylin. Jane felt her stomach tighten. The conversation sounded personal, not like two people discussing business or casual topics during a corporate event. Jane stepped forward carefully and looked around the corner. The sight froze her in place. Talia stood with her back near the wall beside the elevator doors. Kaylin stood directly in front of her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. His hand rested around her waist. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Talia lifted her face toward him, and Kaylin kissed her. The hallway felt silent. Jane could not move. Her mind struggled to accept what her eyes had just seen. Elowen trusted both of these people completely. Her husband, her closest friend. And they stood here in a private corridor, sharing a moment meant to remain hidden. Jane felt a wave of disbelief spread through her chest. This was not a misunderstanding, not a harmless conversation. It was betrayal. She stepped back quietly before they noticed her. Her heart beat faster as she turned away from the corner. One thought filled her mind. Elowen had no idea what was happening. Jane walked away from the hallway without making a sound. Her heart beat faster with every step as she returned toward the elevator. The music from the celebration slowly grew louder again, yet the room no longer felt the same. Only minutes earlier, the evening looked like a normal corporate event. Now everything felt different. Jane stepped back into the rooftop lounge. Executives continued celebrating. Laughter filled the room. Glasses clinked while investors praised Kaylin's leadership. No one else knew what had just happened down that quiet corridor. Jane stood near the balcony again, trying to steady her thoughts. Her mind replayed the moment over and over. Talia leaning against the wall. Kaylin's hand around her waist. The kiss. There was no confusion about what she saw. Elowen trusted both of them more than anyone else in her life. That trust had been broken. Jane's chest tightened as she stared out the lights covering the city below. One question formed in her mind. Should she tell Elowen? Revealing the truth would shatter her friend's marriage and destroy a friendship that had lasted for years. But staying silent meant allowing the betrayal to continue. Jane closed her eyes for a moment. Loyalty demanded honesty. Still, the weight of that truth felt heavy. She knew one thing with certainty. Sooner or later, Elowen deserved to know. Before the story continues, ask yourself something. If you discovered a secret like this between two people you care about, would you reveal the truth or stay silent? And if stories about loyalty and betrayal interest you, subscribe now, because what happens next will change Elowen's life forever. Elowen Maris carried a presence that made people feel safe, not because she spoke loudly or demanded attention, but because she listened carefully. People often trusted her with personal thoughts they rarely shared with anyone else. Friends described her as calm, steady, and thoughtful. When tension rose in a room, Elowen often became the person others turned toward for balance. She did not chase recognition. She valued meaningful work, honest relationships, and quiet progress more than public praise. That attitude followed her everywhere. At professional gatherings, people remembered her for thoughtful questions rather than long speeches. In personal relationships, she focused on understanding others before expecting to be understood. Those who knew her well noticed something else. Elowen protected loyalty with deep seriousness. If someone earned her trust, she gave it completely. She believed relationships required care, patience, and consistency. Because of that belief, she rarely formed shallow friendships. Her circle remained small, but those within it held great importance in her life. This reputation followed her long before she married into wealth. Even after becoming the wife of a billionaire technology executive, Elowen remained the same grounded person. Her calm nature never changed, and that quiet strength became one of the qualities that first captured Kaylin Varelli's attention years earlier. Elowen believed trust formed the foundation of every meaningful relationship. In her view, honesty created stability. Without it, even the strongest connections eventually collapsed under pressure. She learned this lesson early in life. Many people rushed toward quick success, recognition, and influence. Elowen followed a different path. She believed strong outcomes required patience. When friends complained about slow progress in their careers, Elowen often reminded them that meaningful growth took time. She carried the same belief into relationships. Arguments rarely pushed her toward immediate reaction. Instead, she preferred reflection and conversation. Her goal was always understanding rather than winning. This patience shaped the way she loved. Elowen did not search for perfection in people. She looked for sincerity, effort, and respect. If those qualities existed, she believed challenges could be solved. Because of that perspective, she rarely suspected deception in those close to her. Trust, in her mind, remained something sacred. When someone gave their word, she expected them to honor it. That belief influenced the way she approached friendships, marriage, and partnerships. And it explained why betrayal would one day wound her far more deeply than anger ever could. People often felt calmer after spending time with Elowen. Her presence carried a steady energy that eased tension in difficult situations. When conversations became heated, she spoke with quiet clarity that helped others slow down and reconsider their reactions. Colleagues respected that ability. During business meetings, Elowen rarely interrupted others. Instead, she listened closely and responded with thoughtful insight. Many executives appreciated that approach because it encouraged productive discussions rather than arguments. Friends experienced the same comfort. When someone faced personal struggles, Elowen offered support without judgment. She asked careful questions and allowed people to speak freely. That ability made her an anchor within many relationships. Even Kaylin noticed it early in their relationship. As the leader of a fast-growing robotics company, his days filled with intense pressure. Investors demanded results. Engineers raced against deadlines. Media attention followed every major announcement. The weight of leadership rarely allowed him to relax. Yet when he spent time with Elowen, that pressure softened. She never competed with his ambition. Instead, she reminded him that success meant little without stability and meaningful connections. Her calm influence became a quiet refuge in his otherwise demanding world. Elowen's values formed long before she entered the world of technology investors and corporate leadership. She grew up in a modest household where discipline and integrity guided everyday life. Her parents believed character mattered more than status. They encouraged honesty, responsibility, and kindness toward others. From an early age, Elowen learned to appreciate effort rather than shortcuts. Her father often reminded her that reputation followed people throughout their lives. Once damaged, rebuilding trust required far greater effort than protecting it in the first place. Those lessons remained with her. During school years, she focused on learning rather than competition. Teachers noticed her curiosity and dedication. While many students rushed toward popularity, Elowen preferred meaningful friendships and thoughtful discussions. Her mother played an equally strong role in shaping her outlook. She believed compassion strengthened leadership. Helping others succeed created stronger communities than chasing personal advantage alone. Elowen absorbed that perspective deeply. By the time she entered adulthood, these early values had become part of her identity. Integrity guided her decisions, patience guided her relationships, and loyalty guided the people she chose to keep close. Elowen possessed sharp intelligence, though she rarely displayed it for recognition. Her academic interests centered around ethical innovation and responsible technology development. She believed modern industries carried enormous power to shape society, and that power required thoughtful leadership. While studying business strategy and social development, she explored how technology could improve education, healthcare, and community resources. Her professors quickly noticed her analytical ability. She asked thoughtful questions that connected business growth with social responsibility. Many classmates admired her ability to examine complex problems from multiple perspectives. After completing her studies, Elowen chose work aligned with those principles. Instead of chasing high-paying corporate roles immediately, she supported nonprofit programs focused on education and community development. Her work connected entrepreneurs with young students interested in science and engineering. She believed opportunity should extend beyond wealthy circles. That philosophy later influenced the charitable initiatives she launched after marrying Kalin. Even while surrounded by wealth and corporate influence, Elowen remained committed to helping others gain access to knowledge and opportunity. Her intelligence guided long-term impact rather than personal recognition. During graduate school in Chicago, Elowen formed two friendships that would shape her adult life: Jane Mazer and Talia Verdon. The three women met during their first semester while attending the same business program. At first, their personalities seemed very different. Jane preferred careful observation and analytical thinking. Her attention to detail made her stand out in financial studies. Talia carried vibrant energy. She loved social environments and excelled in marketing strategy courses that required creative thinking and persuasive communication. Elowen often stood between those two extremes. Her calm nature balanced Jane's quiet focus and Talia's outgoing charisma. Despite their differences, the three women quickly grew close. They studied together during long evenings at the university library. They encouraged each other through demanding exams and project deadlines. When stress threatened their motivation, they reminded each other why they began their studies in the first place. Over time, their friendship strengthened beyond academic cooperation. They celebrated birthdays together, shared meals during difficult weeks, and offered emotional support whenever life outside school became complicated. For Elowen, those friendships represented loyalty she believed would last forever. Near the end of graduate school, the three friends gathered one evening on the rooftop of their apartment building, overlooking the Chicago skyline. Graduation approached quickly. Soon their careers would lead them in different directions across the country. The moment carried both excitement and uncertainty. Jane spoke first about her plans to join a financial consulting firm. Talia discussed marketing opportunities within growing corporate networks. Elowen planned to focus on ethical development programs connected to emerging technology industries. Despite their different paths, none of them wanted distance to weaken their friendship. So they made a simple promise that night. No matter where life took them, their loyalty would remain unchanged. They would support each other through success and failure. They would celebrate each milestone together. And if any one of them ever needed help, the others would always respond. At the time, the promise felt natural. Friendship built through years of shared struggle rarely fades easily. Elowen believed those words completely. She trusted both women with her life. And for many years, that trust never seemed misplaced. Until the night Jane stood in a quiet hallway and witnessed a truth Elowen never expected. The first time Elowen Maris met Kalin Varelli happened during a technology investment summit in San Francisco. The conference brought together entrepreneurs, investors, engineers, and corporate leaders from across the country. Inside the convention hall, companies presented new innovations designed to shape the future of robotics and artificial intelligence. Large screens displayed demonstrations of machines designed to assist surgeons, automate factories, and improve transportation systems. Venture capital groups moved from one presentation to another, searching for the next breakthrough worth funding. Elowen attended as part of a nonprofit initiative, exploring how emerging technology could support education and community programs. She spent most of the morning attending panels focused on ethical innovation. One keynote session drew a much larger crowd than the others. That presentation belonged to Kalin Varelli. At the time, Varelli Dynamics had already begun attracting attention within the robotics sector. Investors spoke about the company as one of the fastest-growing research firms in Silicon Valley. When Kalin stepped onto the stage, the room grew quiet. He spoke clearly about the future of robotics, but his focus extended beyond profit. He discussed responsibility, safety, and the long-term effects of technological advancement. Elowen listened carefully. His message carried both ambition and restraint. It was rare to hear a technology leader speak openly about the human impact behind innovation. By the end of the presentation, curiosity led Elowen to seek a conversation with the man behind those ideas. Within the robotics industry, Kalin Varelli held a reputation that few young entrepreneurs achieved so quickly. He founded Varelli Dynamics while still in his late 20s, building the company around advanced automation systems designed to assist industries requiring precision and safety. Early investors recognized the potential immediately. Within only a few years, Varelli Dynamics secured contracts with manufacturing firms, medical research groups, and defense technology laboratories. Engineers respected Kalin for his ability to combine technical understanding with strategic leadership. He understood the science behind his company's work, while also guiding business growth effectively. Competitors often struggled to keep pace with his vision. While many robotics companies focus solely on speed and efficiency, Kalin pushed his teams to consider ethical applications as well. That balance helped his company earn strong trust from investors. Industry conferences frequently invited him to speak about innovation, leadership, and responsible development. Yet despite the admiration surrounding him, Kalin rarely displayed arrogance. He spoke with controlled confidence, rather than showmanship. For someone carrying such influence, his demeanor remained surprisingly reserved. That quiet seriousness caught Elowen's attention during the summit. She sensed there was more to the man behind the public success than the headlines suggested. As Varelli Dynamics expanded, media attention followed closely. Technology magazines published articles about the company's rapid growth. Journalists described Kalin as one of the most disciplined leaders within the robotics sector. Interviews appeared across financial news networks, discussing the company's newest research projects. Some reporters focused on the machines themselves. Others focused on the young billionaire guiding the company. Photographs of Kalin standing beside prototypes appeared across industry publications. Headlines praised his strategic instincts and technical insight. Despite this attention, Kalin rarely sought public recognition. He granted interviews when necessary, but avoided turning his leadership into celebrity status. His focus remained fixed on the company's work rather than personal fame. Still, the spotlight followed him. Investors watched his decisions closely. Competitors studied his strategies. Employees depended on his direction. Success brought admiration, but it also created expectations that never disappeared. Elowen noticed that tension the first time she saw him speaking privately after the summit panel. While reporters celebrated his achievements, Kalin carried a thoughtful seriousness in his expression. It looked like someone managing responsibility, rather than enjoying praise. That contrast made her curious to learn more about him beyond the headlines. Behind every success story stood the pressure required to sustain it. For Kalin, leadership meant constant decision-making. Every contract negotiation affected hundreds of employees. Every research investment shaped the company's future. Investors expected continued growth, while engineers depended on stable funding for innovation. Those responsibilities rarely allowed rest. Late nights reviewing reports became normal. Travel between research facilities and investor meetings filled his calendar. Strategic planning sessions often stretched deep into the evening. Kalin carried those responsibilities quietly. He avoided complaining about the workload. Instead, he focused on maintaining discipline and control over every major decision affecting the company. Yet the pressure still existed. Elowen noticed this when she approached him after the summit panel. While others praised the presentation, Kalin listened politely but appeared distracted. His eyes reflected someone thinking about the next challenge already waiting. Leadership often required emotional distance. Many executives built walls around themselves to maintain focus under pressure. Kalin seemed to carry that same burden. Despite his professional success, a quiet weight followed him through the room. Elowen sensed that beneath the confident public image lived a man balancing far more responsibility than most people realized. Success often brought admiration, but it also created distance. For Kalin, leadership meant fewer people spoke to him honestly. Many conversations around him focused on business advantages rather than genuine connection. Employees respected him. Investors trusted him. Journalists praised him. Yet true friendship became harder to maintain. Most interactions revolved around strategy, negotiations, and corporate growth. The higher he climbed within the industry, the smaller his circle became. During the reception following the summit panel, Elowen noticed him standing alone near a display table examining a robotics prototype. Other executives gathered in groups nearby, but Kalin seemed comfortable remaining apart from the crowd. Not lonely in appearance, just separate. When Elowen approached to congratulate him on the presentation, he responded with polite appreciation. Their conversation began formally, but as they continued speaking, something changed. For the first time that evening, Kalen relaxed slightly. He admitted the public success surrounding his company sometimes felt isolating. Few people spoke with him about ideas rather than expectations. Elowen listened carefully without interrupting. That simple act of listening created a moment of connection neither of them expected. What began as a brief conversation after the summit panel soon lasted much longer than either of them planned. Elowen asked thoughtful questions about how robotics could improve education and accessibility for communities lacking technological resources. Kalen responded with genuine interest. Most discussions he held during conferences revolved around profit margins and investor forecasts. Elowen approached the subject from a different perspective. She focused on human impact. That shift captured his attention. They moved toward a quieter seating area away from the crowded reception hall. The conversation continued as they exchanged ideas about responsible innovation and long-term social benefit. For the first time that day, Kalen spoke openly without feeling pressured to impress anyone. Elowen noticed the change in his voice. His tone softened. His thoughts became more personal. He spoke about wanting his company to create machines that improve safety and opportunity rather than simply increasing corporate efficiency. Elowen respected that ambition. Hours passed without either of them noticing. By the time the event organizers began closing the reception hall, their conversation had grown into something deeper than professional curiosity. As the evening ended, Kalen and Elowen stepped outside the conference center together. The night air carried a cool breeze from the bay. City lights reflected across the water while traffic moved quietly along the distant streets. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Both sensed something meaningful had begun during their conversation. Kalen broke the silence first. He thanked Elowen for the discussion. Few people asked questions that challenged him to think beyond business strategy. Elowen smiled and admitted she enjoyed hearing someone in the technology sector speak about responsibility rather than profit alone. Their exchange carried mutual respect. Before leaving, Kalen asked if she would be willing to continue their conversation another time. Elowen agreed. Neither of them viewed the moment as romantic yet, but a quiet connection had formed. It grew from shared values rather than sudden attraction. Both cared about meaningful work. Both valued integrity and patience. As they parted that evening, neither realized the conversation marked the beginning of a relationship that would soon shape the course of both their lives. After their first meeting at the investment summit, Kalen kept thinking about the conversation he shared with Elowen. In the weeks that followed, he reached out and invited her to dinner. Their first official date took place at a quiet restaurant overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Large windows faced the water where sailboats moved slowly across the evening tide. The setting felt calm, far removed from the pressure that usually surrounded Kalen's professional life. Elowen arrived with the same composed warmth he remembered from the summit. Their conversation picked up naturally where it had ended before. They spoke about technology, education, and the responsibility companies carried when developing powerful tools. Unlike most business discussions Kalen experienced, their dialogue carried depth rather than competition. Over the following weeks, those dinners became a routine. Sometimes they met near the Embarcadero, walking beside the water while watching ferries move across the bay. Other evenings, they explored smaller restaurants, tucked into quiet neighborhoods. Neither of them rushed the relationship. The time they spent together felt steady and genuine. For Kalen, those moments provided something rare. Away from boardrooms and investor expectations, he could speak openly without pressure. For Elowen, the connection felt natural. Trust began forming long before either of them used the word love. As their relationship grew, the conversations between Kalen and Elowen became deeper. They rarely focused on surface topics. Instead, they spoke about the direction they hoped their lives would take. One evening, they sat on a wooden bench along the waterfront, while the sunset spread warm colors across the horizon. Boats drifted slowly through the harbor, while the city lights prepared to glow behind them. Kalen spoke about his dream of building technology that improved safety and opportunity for people working in dangerous industries. He wanted machines that could protect workers rather than replace them. Elowen listened carefully. Then she shared her own vision. She believed innovation should create access for people who normally lacked opportunity. Education programs connected to technology could open doors for communities often left behind. Kalen found her perspective refreshing. Many individuals in his professional world focused strictly on financial returns. Elowen cared more about impact and responsibility. That difference strengthened their connection. Their conversations often lasted hours, moving from ambition to personal values and life goals. Through those discussions, they began understanding each other beyond career titles. Respect deepened, and slowly, affection followed. The more time they spent together, the clearer it became that their connection rested on shared values. Both believed success carried responsibility. Kalin approached innovation with discipline and long-term thinking. He wanted Varelli Dynamics to lead the robotics industry without sacrificing ethical standards. Elowen approached social development with the same seriousness. She worked with nonprofit organizations dedicated to expanding education programs connected to science and engineering. Her goals centered on helping young students gain access to opportunities normally reserved for wealthy communities. When they discussed their work, their ideas often aligned naturally. They spoke about partnerships between corporate research teams and educational foundations. They imagined programs where technology companies funded scholarships, research centers, and community training initiatives. Those conversations excited both of them. Their relationship no longer felt like two separate paths crossing occasionally. Instead, their goals began supporting each other. Kalin admired Elowen's commitment to social impact. Elowen admired Kalin's determination to guide his company responsibly. Together, they began imagining a future where business success and meaningful contribution could exist side by side. That shared vision strengthened the trust growing between them. Their relationship continued developing through simple moments rather than grand gestures. Kalin often invited Elowen to quiet places along the California coast, where they could escape the noise of Silicon Valley. One evening they walked along a coastal trail overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Waves moved steadily below the cliffs while seabirds circled above the water. The path remained mostly empty, allowing them to speak freely without interruption. Elowen appreciated those peaceful settings. They provided space for reflection and honest conversation. After long walks, they often shared dinner at small restaurants facing the ocean. Candlelight reflected against the windows while distant waves created a gentle background rhythm. During those evenings, Kalin appeared more relaxed than anywhere else. The constant demands of his company seemed to fade for a few hours. Elowen noticed the difference. She never pressured him to discuss work unless he wanted to. Instead, she allowed silence and calm moments to exist between conversations. Those simple experiences deepened their emotional connection. Love developed slowly, shaped by patience and genuine understanding rather than sudden excitement. Over time, Kalin began recognizing how important Elowen had become in his life. Before meeting her, his days moved quickly between meetings, negotiations, and research reviews. Every decision carried financial consequences for employees, investors, and partners. Pressure surrounded him constantly. Yet whenever he spent time with Elowen, that pressure seemed lighter. Her calm personality balanced the intensity of his professional world. She never asked him to become someone different. Instead, she supported his ambitions while reminding him that leadership required humanity as well as strategy. One evening, while driving back from the coast, Kalin realized something important. The moments he valued most no longer involved business success. They involved conversations with Elowen. Her presence gave him clarity when his thoughts felt overwhelmed by responsibility. For the first time in many years, Kalin felt understood rather than evaluated. That realization changed how he viewed their relationship. What began as curiosity had grown into something far deeper. He had fallen in love with her. 2 years after their first meeting, Kalin invited Elowen to spend a weekend in Monterey. The coastal town offered stunning views of the Pacific Ocean. Cliffs overlooked wide stretches of water, where waves rolled steadily toward the shore. On the second evening, they walked along a terrace beside the ocean just as the sun began setting. Golden light spread across the horizon, while the wind carried the scent of salt water through the air. Elowen leaned against the railing while watching the waves below. Kalin stood beside her quietly for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. When Elowen turned toward him, she saw a small ring box in his hand. His voice remained calm but sincere. He spoke about the years they spent building trust together. He explained how her presence strengthened his life beyond anything professional success could provide. Then he asked if she would marry him. For a moment, Elowen stood speechless. The ocean stretched endlessly behind them, while the evening sky slowly darkened. Elowen looked at Kaylin with emotion shining in her eyes. The question he asked carried enormous meaning. Their relationship had grown through patience, respect, and shared purpose. Every step along the way felt steady and sincere. She believed completely in the foundation they built together. With a gentle smile, Elowen nodded. "Yes," she said. Kaylin slipped the ring onto her finger as the final colors of sunset faded across the water. They embraced while the sound of waves echoed below the terrace. That moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Soon their engagement would attract attention across social and business circles. Friends, investors, and media outlets would celebrate the union between the respected technology entrepreneur and the thoughtful woman known for her integrity. But in that quiet moment overlooking the Pacific, none of those expectations mattered. Only one thing mattered. They believed their love rested on trust. Before we continue, consider this question. Do you believe trust forms the true foundation of love? Share your thoughts and stay with the story, because the very trust that built this relationship will soon face its greatest test. The wedding between Kaylin Varelli and Elowen Maris quickly became one of the most talked about social events of the year. Guests arrived from across the technology and investment world. Entrepreneurs, research leaders, venture capital partners, and innovation executives gathered to celebrate the union between the respected robotics founder and the woman many admired for her integrity and calm intelligence. The ceremony took place at a private estate overlooking the California coastline. White floral arrangements lined the garden pathways. Soft music drifted through the air while guests took their seats beneath a clear sky. The atmosphere carried elegance without excess. Kaylin preferred simplicity despite his wealth, and Elowen valued meaning more than display. Their wedding reflected both personalities. When Elowen walked down the aisle, many guests noticed the quiet confidence in her expression. She appeared peaceful, certain about the life she was beginning. Kaylin watched her with admiration. For someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms and guiding major corporate decisions, this moment felt deeply personal. Their vows centered on loyalty, patience, and partnership. The words carried genuine weight. Friends and colleagues celebrated the couple with applause as the ceremony concluded. For everyone present, the union seemed built on strong values. Few could imagine how fragile trust could become in the years ahead. After the wedding, Elowen moved into the Varelli estate located just outside Silicon Valley. The property stood on elevated land, overlooking wide stretches of hills and vineyards. Glass walls surrounded the main house, allowing natural light to fill the interior throughout the day. Despite its size, the estate felt welcoming rather than intimidating. Elowen brought warmth into the space through thoughtful design and personal touches. Books filled several rooms. Art created by local artists decorated the halls. Comfortable seating areas encouraged conversation rather than formality. Behind the house stood a private research facility, where Kaylin occasionally hosted small demonstrations for trusted partners and engineers. Visitors often admired the balance between innovation and tranquility surrounding the property. From the terrace, the valley stretched into the distance while sunsets painted the sky with deep colors each evening. Elowen spent many quiet mornings walking through the gardens or enjoying tea on the balcony before beginning her daily work. The estate became more than a symbol of wealth. It became a shared home where both Kaylin and Elowen could build their life together. During those early months of marriage, everything appeared stable and hopeful. Marriage settled into a steady rhythm for Kaylin and Elowen. Kaylin continued guiding Varelli Dynamics through rapid growth. His schedule remained demanding, filled with research briefings, executive meetings, and investor discussions. Yet he made deliberate efforts to protect time for their relationship. Several evenings each week they shared dinner together without distractions. Phones remained silent while they spoke about their days. Elowen appreciated those moments. She understood the pressure Kaylin carried and supported his responsibilities without resentment. Her patience helped maintain balance between his corporate world and their personal life. Weekends often included quiet activities away from the city. Sometimes they visited coastal towns along the Pacific. Other times they hosted small gatherings at the estate for close friends. Their conversations still reflected the same depth that first connected them during the investment summit. They spoke about future goals, ethical leadership, and the impact their work could create. To those around them, the marriage appeared strong. Trust formed the center of their partnership. For Elowen, that trust felt absolute. She believed the life they were building rested on honesty and shared purpose. While Kaylin focused on expanding Varelli Dynamics, Elowen dedicated much of her time to philanthropic initiatives. Her primary focus centered on expanding educational access for students interested in science and engineering. She worked with community organizations to create scholarship programs and mentorship networks connecting young innovators with experienced professionals. Many students came from neighborhoods where advanced technology education rarely reached. Elowen believed opportunity should never depend solely on financial background. Using resources available through Kaylin's foundation, she helped establish several programs designed to support research training, internships, and community science workshops. Teachers praised the initiative for inspiring students who previously lacked exposure to advanced technology fields. Elowen remained actively involved, rather than acting as a distant sponsor. She attended program events, met with students personally, and encouraged their curiosity. Her genuine interest strengthened the impact of each project. Kaylin admired her dedication. He often mentioned that Elowen's work reminded him why innovation mattered beyond corporate success. Together, they appeared to represent a partnership where business growth and social responsibility worked side by side. Among the friends who visited the Varelli estate regularly, Talia Verdon remained one of the most frequent guests. Her marketing career brought her into contact with corporate leaders and innovation networks similar to Kaylin's professional world. Because of that connection, she often traveled through Silicon Valley for meetings and industry events. Whenever her schedule allowed, she stopped by the estate. Talia enjoyed the environment surrounding Elowen's new life. The views, the technology demonstrations, and the social gatherings hosted by Kaylin attracted many influential guests. She moved easily through those settings. Her confident personality allowed her to connect quickly with people across different industries. Elowen welcomed her visits warmly. Their friendship stretched back many years to graduate school in Chicago. Having Talia nearby made the transition into married life feel even more comfortable. During many visits, Talia joined Kaylin and Elowen for dinner discussions about marketing strategies, technology trends, and charitable partnerships. The conversations often remained lively and engaging. From Elowen's perspective, nothing seemed unusual. She believed she shared her life with two people she trusted completely. That belief made the friendship feel secure. Despite busy careers pulling them in different directions, Elowen, Jane, and Talia continued maintaining the friendship that began during their graduate school years. Whenever schedules aligned, the three women gathered for brunch, weekend visits, or late evening conversations. Sometimes they met at the Varelli estate. Other times, they traveled together for short retreats away from the city. Their personalities still balanced each other naturally. Jane remained thoughtful and observant, often offering practical advice when conversations turned toward business decisions. Talia brought energy and humor into every gathering, keeping the atmosphere lively. Elowen stood at the center of the friendship, connecting both perspectives with calm understanding. They often laughed about the long nights spent studying during their university days. Those memories reminded them how far their lives had progressed since then. Success had taken each of them into different professional worlds. Yet their bond appeared unchanged, at least from Elowen's perspective. She believed the loyalty they promised years earlier still guided their friendship, and during those peaceful gatherings, nothing seemed capable of breaking that trust. For Elowen, life felt balanced, secure, and full of promise. She had no reason to suspect that the harmony surrounding her would soon begin to shift. As Varelli Dynamics expanded, the pace of Kaylin's work increased steadily. New contracts arrived from manufacturing groups, research institutions, and international investors interested in advanced robotics systems. Each opportunity required careful evaluation, and Kaylin remained deeply involved in every strategic decision. His days began earlier than before. Morning briefings with engineering teams often started before sunrise. Financial updates filled the middle of his schedule. Evening meetings with investors frequently continued long after normal work hours. At first, Elowen viewed the change as a natural part of the company's growth. She understood the responsibility resting on Kaylin's shoulders. Leading a rapidly growing technology firm required focus and sacrifice. Still, the difference slowly became noticeable. Dinners together happened less often during the week. Some evenings, Kaylin returned home, late after meetings at the research facility or investor offices in San Francisco. Even when he arrived home, his attention sometimes remained fixed on work messages appearing on his phone. Elowen remained supportive. She encouraged him to rest whenever possible and reminded him that long-term success required balance. Kaylin appreciated her patience. Yet the quiet shift in their routine marked the beginning of changes that neither of them fully understood at the time. Along with longer work hours came a noticeable increase in Kaylin's travel schedule. New partnerships required meetings with investors across different cities. Research teams operated in several locations throughout the country, and Kaylin often visited those facilities personally to review progress. At first, the trips lasted only a day or two. He traveled to Los Angeles to meet manufacturing partners, then returned quickly to Silicon Valley. A few weeks later, he flew to New York to discuss expansion opportunities with international investors. Elowen followed his schedule closely, mostly to ensure she planned her own commitments around his absences. She never questioned the purpose of those trips. The technology industry moved quickly, and maintaining strong relationships with partners required constant communication. Still, over time the travel became more frequent. Some weeks Kaylin spent more nights in hotels than at the estate. He often called Elowen in the evenings, speaking briefly before attending another dinner meeting or strategy session. Their conversations remained warm, yet shorter than before. Elowen continued trusting his explanations. From her perspective, the increased travel represented progress for the company they both supported. She believed the temporary distance served a larger purpose. At the time, she saw no reason to doubt him. During this same period, Talia's visits to the Varelli estate became more frequent. Her career in marketing strategy connected her with many technology firms, seeking guidance on brand positioning and corporate communication. Because of that expertise, she occasionally collaborated with organizations linked to Varelli dynamics. Whenever work brought her into Silicon Valley, she stopped by the estate. At first, those visits happened occasionally. Then they became more regular. Sometimes she joined Elowen for lunch while discussing new campaigns she planned to develop for technology startups. Other times, she attended small social gatherings hosted by Kaylin for business partners. Elowen enjoyed those visits. Seeing her longtime friend brought comfort and familiarity into the busy environment surrounding the company. Talia also seemed fascinated by the innovation happening around Varelli dynamics. She often asked questions about the robotics research teams and the marketing challenges associated with introducing advanced technology to global markets. Kaylin answered those questions thoughtfully whenever the three of them spoke together. Their conversations appeared professional and friendly. From Elowen's perspective, the visits strengthened the connection between her personal life and the professional world surrounding Kaylin's company. Nothing about the situation raised concern, at least not for her. Over time, Talia's professional conversations with Kaylin grew more frequent. Varelli Dynamics continued expanding into new markets, and several executives suggested that stronger communication strategies could help present the company's innovations to broader audiences. Talia's marketing background made her a valuable voice during those discussions. When she visited the estate, she and Kaylin occasionally sat together reviewing branding ideas or campaign concepts related to upcoming product launches. Elowen often joined those conversations at first, but sometimes she stepped away to handle calls connected to her education programs or nonprofit meetings. During those moments, Talia and Kaylin continued discussing strategy on their own. From the outside, everything appeared professional. They spoke about messaging, public engagement, and the importance of presenting technology in ways that ordinary people could understand. Elowen trusted both of them completely. She never considered the possibility that business conversations might slowly become something more personal. The discussions seemed helpful for Kaylin's company. Talia appeared genuinely interested in contributing her expertise. From Elowen's perspective, the collaboration looked like another example of her friends supporting each other's success. She saw cooperation, not warning signs. As weeks passed, subtle details began appearing in small moments. Sometimes when Elowen entered a room where Talia and Kaylin were already speaking, their conversation would pause briefly before continuing. Other times, she noticed them laughing together about something that had happened earlier in the day. The laughter itself felt harmless. Friends shared jokes all the time. Still, their conversations occasionally shifted into quieter tones when others approached. At social gatherings hosted at the estate, Talia and Kaylin sometimes stood slightly apart from the larger group while discussing marketing ideas or industry news. Elowen never interpreted those moments as unusual. She believed both of them valued professional discussions, and their interests often overlapped. From her point of view, their interactions showed mutual respect. Meanwhile, Kaylin seemed comfortable speaking with Talia about communication strategies connected to the company's public image. Her insight helped him consider perspectives outside engineering and finance. Those exchanges produced thoughtful conversations, and for Elowen, seeing two people she trusted collaborate freely felt completely normal. She continued believing the harmony surrounding her life remained strong and stable. Trust formed the center of Elowen's relationships. Because she valued honesty so deeply, she rarely imagined deception within the circle of people she loved. Kaylin had always spoken openly about his responsibilities and the pressure he faced leading a major technology company. She believed his explanations about work schedules and travel. Talia had been her close friend for years. They shared memories from university days, career struggles, and personal milestones. Those experiences built a bond Elowen believed would never weaken. Whenever Talia visited the estate, Elowen welcomed her warmly. She felt proud introducing her friend to the world surrounding Varelli dynamics. She enjoyed seeing Talia engage with business leaders and participate in thoughtful discussions about marketing strategy. To Elowen, the friendship between her husband and her closest friend seemed healthy. She appreciated the respect they showed each other during conversations. Her confidence in both relationships felt unshakable. Because trust guided her decisions, suspicion never entered her mind. While small changes unfolded quietly around her, Elowen continued living with the same calm belief she always carried. The people she loved would never betray her. Jane visited the estate less often than Talia due to her demanding career in financial compliance. Yet whenever she joined the group for dinner or social gatherings, her observant nature noticed details others might overlook. She watched body language carefully. She listened to the tone people used during conversations. Those habits developed naturally through years of reviewing financial records, where small inconsistencies sometimes revealed larger problems. During several visits, Jane noticed subtle moments between Kaylin and Talia. Eye contact that lingered slightly longer than expected. Conversations that paused when someone else entered the room. Private jokes that seemed to exist only between them. None of these details alone confirmed anything suspicious. Still, Jane quietly stored each observation in her mind. Her instincts rarely reacted without reason. She never confronted anyone directly. Instead, she continued watching with calm patience. From Elowen's perspective, Jane's silence simply reflected her thoughtful personality. But inside Jane's mind, a quiet question had already begun forming. Something about the growing closeness between Kaylin and Talia did not feel entirely right. And soon, an unexpected moment would confirm the truth she hoped she was wrong about. Jane had attended many corporate events during her career, but the celebration at the Varelli Dynamics rooftop lounge would remain in her memory longer than any other. At first, the evening looked like a typical investor gathering. Executives discussed expansion plans, while reporters captured interviews with leaders in the robotics industry. Music played softly across the room while city lights stretched across the San Francisco skyline. Jane arrived early and stood near the balcony, observing the room with the quiet attention that defined her personality. Then she noticed Kaylin speaking with Talia. Their conversation appeared friendly, yet something about their posture caught her attention. Talia stood close beside him, her voice softer than usual. Kaylin leaned slightly toward her as they spoke. Jane watched them for a few moments. Then they moved toward the corridor leading to the private elevators. Curiosity pushed her to follow. The hallway stood quiet compared to the celebration behind her. When she reached the corner near the elevators, she heard their voices before seeing them. Talia spoke gently. Kaylin answered. Jane stepped forward just enough to see around the corner. That was when she witnessed the moment that confirmed everything. Kaylin's arm rested around Talia's waist. Their faces moved closer, and they shared a kiss. Jane froze. The truth stood in front of her, undeniable and deeply troubling. Jane stepped back quietly before they could notice her presence. Her heart beat harder as she walked away from the hallway and returned toward the main lounge. The noise of the celebration filled the air again, yet everything felt different now. The scene she had just witnessed replayed inside her mind. Kaylin and Talia, together, not as friends, not as professional partners, but as two people hiding something they did not want others to see. Jane stood near the balcony again, staring out over the city lights while her thoughts raced. Part of her hoped there was some explanation she had misunderstood. But the memory remained clear. The closeness, the way Kaylin held her, the kiss. Jane knew what she saw. A heavy question formed inside her mind. Should she tell Elowen? The truth would shatter her friend's marriage and destroy a friendship that had lasted for years. Yet remaining silent would allow the betrayal to continue. Jane had always valued honesty, but this situation carried consequences far greater than a simple mistake. She felt caught between two painful choices: protect Elowen from immediate pain, or reveal a truth that could change everything. As Jane stood quietly beside the balcony railing, memories of her friendship with Elowen filled her thoughts. They met years earlier during graduate school in Chicago. Those years formed the foundation of a friendship built through shared struggles, long nights studying, and countless conversations about the future they hoped to build. Elowen had always been the most loyal person Jane knew. She trusted people fully once they earned her respect. That trust formed the center of every relationship she maintained. Jane remembered the promises they made as students. No matter where life led them, they would remain honest with each other. They would support each other through every challenge. Elowen had honored that promise every single time. She offered encouragement during difficult moments and celebrated every success Jane achieved. Thinking about that loyalty made Jane's chest tighten. Elowen welcomed Talia into her home without hesitation. She trusted Kaylin completely as her husband, and both of them were betraying that trust. Jane closed her eyes briefly. Friendship meant standing beside someone even when the truth became painful. If their roles were reversed, Elowen would never hide something this serious from her. That realization slowly made the decision clearer. By the time the investor event ended, Jane had reached a quiet conclusion. She could not keep the secret. The drive home that night felt longer than usual. Her thoughts moved constantly between doubt and determination. Telling Elowen would cause immediate pain, but allowing the deception to continue would create far greater harm over time. Jane believed truth mattered, even when it arrived with consequences. The following afternoon, she drove to the Varelli estate. The property looked peaceful beneath the afternoon sun. Hills stretched across the distance, while the glass walls of the house reflected the surrounding landscape. Elowen greeted her warmly at the door. Her smile carried the same calm kindness Jane had always admired. They sat together in the sunroom overlooking the valley. Elowen poured tea while speaking about a new community education project she planned to launch through Kaylin's foundation. Jane listened quietly for a moment. The words felt heavy in her chest. Finally, she placed her cup on the table and looked at her friend. "Elowen," she said softly, "there is something you deserve to know." Those few words marked the beginning of a conversation that would change all of their lives. The afternoon sun stretched across the hills surrounding the Varelli estate as Jane's car moved slowly up the long private drive. She had made this drive many times before. Usually those visits carried excitement. The estate often hosted dinners, small gatherings, or quiet weekends where friends relaxed away from the pressure of their careers. Today felt different. Jane's hands rested firmly on the steering wheel as she approached the house. The glass exterior reflected the bright sky while the surrounding landscape looked peaceful and calm. Nothing about the setting suggested that a painful conversation waited inside. Jane stepped out of the car and paused for a moment before walking toward the entrance. She reminded herself why she came. Elowen deserved honesty. When the door opened, Elowen greeted her with the same warmth she always showed. "Jane," she said with a smile, stepping forward to embrace her friend. Jane returned the hug, though her mind remained heavy with what she needed to say. Elowen led her inside. The house felt quiet that afternoon. Sunlight filled the rooms while distant hills stretched across the view beyond the windows. "Come sit with me in the sunroom," Elowen suggested gently. Jane nodded. Each step forward brought her closer to a moment she knew would change everything. The sunroom stood at the back of the house, surrounded by tall glass panels that revealed the valley stretching across the horizon. Soft light filled the space, reflecting off the polished wooden floor. Comfortable chairs sat near the windows, while a small table rested between them. It had always been one of Elowen's favorite places inside the estate. Whenever she needed quiet time away from the busy world surrounding Kaylin's company, she came here to think or read. Jane took a seat near the window. From where she sat, she could see rolling hills covered in green and gold shades beneath the afternoon sky. The peaceful view made the conversation she carried feel even heavier. Elowen sat across from her with a relaxed expression. She appeared completely unaware of the storm approaching her life. "It's been too long since we last talked properly," Elowen said warmly. Jane managed a small smile. Her eyes briefly drifted toward the landscape outside the window. For a moment she wished the afternoon could remain quiet and simple. But the truth she carried would not allow silence much longer. Elowen moved toward a small cabinet and prepared tea for both of them. The familiar routine filled the room with calm energy. Steam rose gently from the cups as she placed one in front of Jane before sitting down again. "How have things been with work?" Elowen asked. Jane answered carefully, describing recent projects and long hours reviewing financial reports for technology clients. The conversation flowed easily at first. Elowen spoke about a new education initiative she planned to launch through the foundation connected to Kaylin's company. The program aimed to support students interested in engineering and robotics research. Her voice carried excitement. She explained how the program could open opportunities for young innovators who normally lacked access to advanced technology training. Jane listened quietly. Every word reminded her how much Elowen valued honesty and meaningful work. As the conversation continued, Jane's attention slowly returned to the reason she came. She placed her cup gently on the table. The moment had arrived. Her heart felt heavy as she looked at her friend. "Elowen," she said softly, "there is something important we need to talk about." Elowen noticed the change in Jane's voice immediately. Her expression shifted from relaxed curiosity to quiet concern. "What is it?" she asked gently. Jane took a slow breath. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind during the drive to the estate, yet speaking the words still felt difficult. "I attended the Varelli Dynamics investor event last night," Jane began. Elowen nodded. "Yes, Kaylin mentioned it earlier this week." Jane continued carefully. "While I was there, I saw something I wish I hadn't seen." Elowen leaned forward slightly, listening. Jane explained the evening step by step. The rooftop lounge, the celebration, her noticing Kaylin and Talia standing close together, their quiet walk toward the private hallway. Elowen's eyes remained focused on her. Jane spoke slowly, choosing honesty over comfort. "I followed them because something felt wrong," she said quietly. Her voice lowered as she reached the final part of the story. "When I looked around the corner, I saw Kaylin holding Talia, and they kissed." Silence filled the room. The peaceful sunroom suddenly felt very still. Jane watched Elowen's face carefully, unsure how her friend would respond. For several seconds, Elowen did not speak. Her eyes remained steady, though the warmth in her expression slowly faded. At first, disbelief crossed her face. The words she had just heard seemed impossible to accept. Kaylin, Talia, two people she trusted completely. Her mind searched for another explanation. Yet Jane's voice carried no hesitation or confusion. Jane had never exaggerated the truth. If she said she saw the moment clearly, Elowen believed her. The realization arrived slowly. Her husband and her closest friend had betrayed her trust. Still, Elowen did not react with anger or tears. Instead, she sat quietly, absorbing the information piece by piece. Her calm response surprised Jane. But inside Elowen's mind, emotions moved carefully through shock, sadness, and reflection. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. Jane nodded, though the moment still felt heavy. "Before we continue, consider this question. If you were in Elowen's position, how would you respond after hearing this truth? Would you confront them immediately, or would you stay calm and search for clarity first? Share your thoughts as the story continues, because Elowen's response will surprise everyone." After Jane left the estate, the house grew quiet again. Elowen remained in the sunroom for a long time, staring across the hills while processing everything she had just learned. Her mind replayed Jane's words carefully. Kaylin, Talia, a hidden moment in a private hallway. Shock lingered, yet Elowen resisted the urge to react impulsively. She understood something important. Before confronting anyone, she needed clarity. That evening, Kaylin returned home later than usual. He greeted Elowen warmly and asked about her day, just as he always did. Elowen answered calmly. She watched him closely while they spoke. Nothing about his behavior suggested guilt. His tone remained relaxed. He discussed meetings with engineers and upcoming presentations for investors. Later that week, Talia visited the estate for dinner. Again, Elowen observed quietly. She noticed how naturally Kaylin and Talia spoke with each other. Their conversations appeared casual on the surface. Yet now that she knew the truth, small details felt different. A glance lasting slightly longer. A shared smile during certain conversations. These moments might have passed unnoticed before. Now, Elowen paid attention to everything. She asked no questions. She revealed no suspicion. Instead, she began watching carefully. Because if betrayal truly existed, she intended to understand the full truth before taking action. In the days that followed, Elowen quietly observed Kaylin's habits more closely than ever before. She noticed how often his phone vibrated late in the evening. Sometimes the messages arrived while they were sitting together in the living room. Other times they appeared during dinner conversations. Each time, Kaylin glanced at the screen briefly, before replying with short responses. Before learning the truth, Elowen would have ignored these small moments. Executives received messages constantly. Business rarely paused. But now her attention sharpened. One night she woke briefly after midnight and noticed the soft glow of Kaylin's phone illuminating the bedroom. He sat near the window replying to messages while believing she remained asleep. Elowen closed her eyes again, pretending not to notice. The following morning he mentioned an early meeting scheduled across the city. His explanation sounded reasonable. Still, the pattern continued throughout the week. Short messages arriving late at night. Quiet responses sent quickly. Elowen never attempted to read the messages directly. She simply observed the behavior. Each detail added another piece to the quiet puzzle forming in her mind. And the more she noticed, the clearer Jane's warning began to feel. Kaylin's travel schedule soon added another layer to Elowen's quiet investigation. He had always traveled for business, but lately the trips appeared more frequent and sometimes less predictable. One afternoon he mentioned needing to meet potential partners in San Francisco. The trip would only last a few hours. Later that evening, he returned much later than expected. When Elowen asked casually about the meeting, he explained that traffic delayed his return. His answer sounded believable. Still, Elowen stored the detail in her memory. A few days later, another trip appeared on his schedule. This time he claimed an urgent meeting with investors visiting from overseas. Again, the explanation seemed reasonable, yet something about the pattern felt unusual. Kaylin rarely allowed meetings to appear suddenly, without planning them days in advance. Elowen continued listening carefully whenever he discussed his schedule. She paid attention to small inconsistencies between his explanations and the timing of his trips. At the same time, she maintained the same calm demeanor he expected from her. She shared dinners with him. She discussed her nonprofit work. She showed no hint that she questioned anything. Inside, however, her understanding grew clearer with every passing day. Maintaining emotional control required great discipline. Elowen felt the weight of betrayal constantly pressing against her thoughts, yet she refused to allow anger to guide her decisions. Instead, she chose patience. Whenever Kaylin spoke with her, she listened with the same calm expression she had always shown. When Talia visited the estate again, Elowen welcomed her politely. Their conversations continued normally. They discussed work, shared memories, and laughed about past experiences, just as they always had. Neither Kaylin nor Talia suspected that Elowen now understood their secret. This restraint protected her from making a mistake driven by emotion. Elowen believed truth required careful handling. If she reacted too quickly, she might lose the opportunity to understand the full situation. So she waited. She watched. She allowed their behavior to reveal itself naturally. During quiet evenings alone, however, she reflected deeply. The trust she once placed in both of them had been broken. Still, she refused to respond with chaos. Instead, she focused on something far more powerful: clarity. While observing their behavior, Elowen also began examining another area of her life she had rarely focused on before: her financial partnership within Varelli Dynamics. Before their marriage, Kaylin had insisted that Elowen hold a meaningful equity position in the company. He believed their relationship should reflect equal trust both personally and professionally. At the time, Elowen appreciated the gesture but rarely involved herself in corporate decisions. Her attention remained focused on philanthropic work. Now that perspective changed. She contacted one of the company's legal advisors privately and requested access to detailed records regarding her ownership shares. The documents revealed the full structure of her investment. Her equity represented a significant percentage of the company's controlling interest. Elowen studied the reports carefully. She reviewed voting rights connected to those shares. She examined how ownership influenced leadership authority within the company's structure. For the first time, she understood the full weight of her position. Her role inside Varelli Dynamics carried far more influence than she had ever exercised, and that discovery opened a new possibility in her mind. Over several days, Elowen continued reviewing the legal framework surrounding her ownership stake. The more she studied the documents, the clearer the implications became. Her shares represented one of the largest voting positions within the company. Although Kalin served as founder and chief executive, major strategic decisions still required approval from the board and significant shareholders. Elowen's investment gave her influence over those decisions. Until now, she had never considered using that power. She trusted Kalin completely and believed their partnership would always remain united. Now the situation looked different. If trust had been broken within their marriage, the balance of power within the company also required reconsideration. Elowen spoke quietly with legal advisors about the possibility of transferring her shares into an independent trust dedicated to ethical technology development programs. The structure would shift voting authority away from Kalin's direct control. The idea formed slowly but precisely. Elowen understood something important. She did not need anger to respond. She needed strategy, and the discovery of her equity power provided exactly that. After discovering the true influence of her ownership in Varelli Dynamics, Elowen moved forward carefully. She understood that any major financial decision connected to the company would require professional guidance. The structure of corporate ownership involved legal frameworks that had to be handled with precision. Rather than raising questions inside the company itself, she contacted a trusted legal advisor who had previously assisted with philanthropic foundations connected to her work. Their meeting took place quietly at a private office in San Francisco. The lawyer greeted Elowen with respectful curiosity. She rarely requested meetings related to business matters, so her presence alone suggested something important. Elowen explained that she wanted to explore the possibility of transferring her shares into an independent trust focused on ethical technology development. She did not mention the betrayal she had discovered. Instead, she framed the discussion around long-term social impact. The attorney listened carefully while reviewing documents related to her ownership position. After examining the records, he confirmed what Elowen already suspected. Her shares carried significant influence. Any structural change connected to those shares would affect the company's balance of power. Elowen remained calm throughout the conversation. Her voice carried steady confidence. For the first time since learning the truth about Kalin and Talia, she felt a quiet sense of direction beginning to form. Following the initial consultation, Elowen requested a full breakdown of the authority attached to her investment. The legal team prepared detailed reports explaining how her shares functioned within the governance structure of Varelli Dynamics. She studied the information carefully over several evenings. The company's ownership model gave large shareholders voting power over strategic decisions, leadership structure, and major financial actions. Her stake represented a percentage large enough to influence board decisions. Until now, Elowen had never exercised that authority. She trusted Kalin completely and believed the company would always remain aligned with the values they shared. Now she examined the documents through a different perspective. If she chose to transfer those shares into an independent trust, the voting rights connected to them would move away from Kalin's direct influence. That change would not destroy the company, but it would shift control in ways he could not easily reverse. Elowen did not rush the decision. She reviewed every clause carefully. Her goal was not chaos. Her goal was accountability. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, she realized she possessed the power to protect her dignity without creating unnecessary destruction. Once Elowen confirmed the authority connected to her shares, she began shaping the structure of the independent trust. The organization would focus on supporting ethical technology research and education programs for young engineers. Her philanthropic work already aligned with that mission. Now she simply expanded the concept into a formal foundation capable of managing large financial assets. Legal advisors helped design the governance model. A board of respected educators, technology researchers, and nonprofit leaders would oversee the trust's decisions. Their role would ensure that funding supported programs promoting responsible innovation. Elowen personally reviewed every candidate suggested for the board. She chose individuals known for integrity rather than influence. The trust would operate independently from Virelli Dynamics while still supporting the broader technology community. Once finalized, the foundation could legally hold and manage the shares she planned to transfer. The structure created something far greater than a personal reaction. It created a lasting institution capable of supporting ethical progress. That outcome mattered deeply to Elowen. Her response to betrayal would not center on revenge. It would center on purpose. While the legal structure developed quietly behind the scenes, Elowen began considering the moment when the change would become public. Every year, Virelli Dynamics hosted a major investor conference in Silicon Valley. Executives, investors, and journalists attended the event to review company progress and hear Kaylin present future plans. This year's conference would attract even greater attention due to several new robotics breakthroughs the company planned to reveal. Elowen realized the event offered a powerful opportunity. If she transferred her shares just before the conference announcement, the change would be revealed in front of the entire investment community. The trust's existence would immediately become part of the company's public record. Her legal advisors confirmed that such timing would remain completely legitimate within corporate regulations. Elowen prepared carefully. She reviewed the conference schedule. She coordinated with the trust's legal representatives to ensure every document would be finalized before the event. When the moment arrived, the announcement would occur calmly and professionally. No accusations, no dramatic confrontation, just a clear shift in power. Throughout this entire process, Elowen maintained the same calm routine inside the Virelli estate. Kaylin never suspected anything had changed. She continued sharing dinners with him during the evenings when he returned from work. They discussed company updates, her philanthropic projects, and ordinary details about their daily lives. When Talia visited the estate again, Elowen welcomed her politely. Their conversations remained friendly and relaxed. Neither of them noticed the quiet determination forming behind Elowen's composed expression. That restraint required discipline. The betrayal still hurt deeply. Yet Elowen refused to allow emotion to guide her actions. Instead, she moved forward with patience. Every document prepared, every legal approval completed, every detail aligned with her plan. From the outside, life inside the Virelli estate looked completely normal. But beneath that calm surface, Elowen had already begun reclaiming control of her future. And soon, the world surrounding Virelli Dynamics would witness the result. Every year, Virelli Dynamics hosted an investor conference that attracted leaders from across the technology world. This year's event was larger than ever. The conference center in Silicon Valley filled with executives, engineers, venture capital partners, and financial analysts, eager to hear the company's next strategic vision. Large screens displayed images of robotics prototypes developed by Virelli Dynamics. Engineers demonstrated machines designed to assist complex manufacturing and medical research environments. Journalists moved between guests preparing articles that would reach millions of readers the following morning. Excitement filled the room. Many believed Virelli Dynamics was about to announce several major expansion initiatives that would strengthen its position in the robotics industry. At the center of that attention stood Kaylin Virelli. As founder and chief executive, his leadership shaped the company's direction from the beginning. Investors trusted his discipline and long-term vision. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation as attendees took their seats. Few noticed Elowen entering quietly through a side corridor. She wore a composed expression as she greeted several guests politely before taking a seat near the front of the hall. To most observers, her presence appeared routine. After all, she represented the philanthropic branch of the company. No one realized that before the day ended, the balance of power inside Virelli Dynamics would change forever. When the lights dimmed, the audience turned its attention toward the stage. Kaylin stepped forward with the calm confidence that had defined his leadership for years. The massive screen behind him displayed the Virelli Dynamics logo, while hundreds of investors listened carefully. He began his keynote address by reviewing the company's progress. New robotic systems designed to improve manufacturing safety, research partnerships with medical institutions exploring surgical assistance technology, expansion plans targeting international markets. Each announcement drew interest from the audience. Kalin spoke with clarity and authority. Years of experience addressing investors had sharpened his ability to explain complex innovations in ways that inspired confidence. Throughout the presentation, he emphasized the company's commitment to responsible innovation. Technology, he explained, carried enormous influence over society. Companies developing such tools had a duty to act with integrity and long-term vision. Many investors nodded in agreement. The message aligned perfectly with the company's public identity: integrity, responsibility, leadership. As Kalin concluded his speech, the room filled with applause. From the audience's perspective, the conference had delivered exactly what they expected. But the most important moment of the day had not yet arrived. The applause continued for several seconds as Kalin stepped back from the center of the stage. Investors and executives rose from their seats to show appreciation for the presentation. For many people in the room, Varelli Dynamics represented one of the most promising technology companies in the industry. Its growth had been rapid, yet its reputation remained strong. Financial analysts praised the company's leadership structure. Research institutions valued its commitment to safety and responsible development. And investors believed Kalin's strategic vision would guide the company toward even greater success. Several reporters prepared questions for the next segment of the conference. Others typed notes into laptops, capturing details for articles scheduled to publish later that day. The atmosphere inside the hall reflected celebration. Few people noticed the quiet movement happening near the side of the stage. Elowen had risen from her seat. She walked calmly toward one of the event coordinators and spoke briefly with him. Moments later, the coordinator nodded. Kalin returned to the podium to introduce the next speaker. But before he could continue, Elowen stepped onto the stage. Her unexpected presence immediately drew the attention of everyone in the room. The audience grew quiet as Elowen approached the microphone. Although she occasionally spoke at company events about charitable initiatives, her appearance during the main investor session surprised many attendees. Kalin turned toward her with visible curiosity. He had not expected her to join the presentation. Still, he welcomed her with a polite smile, assuming she intended to discuss the education programs funded through the Varelli Foundation. Elowen stood calmly beside him. Her posture remained composed as she looked across the room filled with executives and investors. "Thank you for allowing me a brief moment," she began. Her voice carried steady confidence. "I want to share an important development connected to my involvement with Varelli Dynamics." Several audience members leaned forward with interest. Most assumed the announcement would involve philanthropic expansion or new community partnerships. Instead, Elowen continued with quiet clarity. "Over the past several months, I have worked with legal advisors to establish an independent trust dedicated to supporting ethical technology development and education for young engineers." Kalin listened carefully. He still believed the announcement involved only charitable work. But Elowen had not yet reached the most important part. Elowen paused briefly before continuing. "As part of this initiative," she said calmly, "I have transferred my entire ownership, stake in Varelli Dynamics into the governance of this independent trust." The words landed across the room with immediate impact. Many investors exchanged confused glances. Elowen's shares represented a significant percentage of the company's controlling interest. By transferring those shares into a trust governed by independent board members, she had shifted voting authority away from Kalin's direct control. Kalin's expression changed slightly as he processed the statement. He had known about her philanthropic ambitions, but he had not expected such a major financial decision to appear during the conference. Elowen continued speaking without hesitation. "The trust will use its voting authority to ensure that technological advancement continues to align with responsible leadership and ethical development." The audience listened in stunned silence. This announcement had nothing to do with charity alone. It represented a major shift in corporate governance, and it had just happened in front of the entire investment community. For several moments, the room remained completely silent. Investors whispered to each other while quickly reviewing the implications of what they had just heard. Financial analysts typed urgent messages into their laptops. Reporters prepared headlines that would soon spread across the technology news cycle. The shift in ownership structure meant the trust's board would now hold significant influence over future decisions inside Varelli Dynamics. Although Kalin remained chief executive, the balance of power had changed. His ability to guide certain corporate actions would now require approval from the independent trust. Several executives looked toward Kalin, waiting to see his reaction. He remained composed, though the surprise on his face had not fully disappeared. Standing beside him, Elowen maintained her calm posture. Her decision had been prepared carefully, every legal step completed, every document finalized. The announcement carried no anger, only quiet certainty, yet its impact moved through the room like a powerful current. After the murmurs settled slightly, Elowen spoke again. Her final message addressed more than corporate structure. "It is easy for companies to speak about integrity," she said, "but true leadership requires living those values every day." Her words carried meaning that extended beyond business. Technology has the power to shape the future of society. Those who guide that power must remain accountable to the trust placed in them by employees, investors, and communities. The audience listened carefully. No accusations were spoken. No personal conflicts were revealed. Yet the message felt unmistakable. Trust, responsibility, integrity. Elowen thanked the audience for their attention before stepping away from the microphone. The room slowly filled with applause again. This time, the applause carried a different tone. Not celebration alone, but respect for the quiet strength of a woman who had just reshaped the future of a powerful company with dignity and control. The moment Elowen stepped away from the stage, the atmosphere inside the conference hall changed. Investors who had arrived expecting routine corporate announcements now faced an unexpected shift in the company's structure. Conversations began immediately. Several venture capital leaders leaned toward each other, quietly discussing the implications of Elowen's decision. Financial analysts reviewed company ownership data on their laptops, while whispering to colleagues seated beside them. For many of them, the transfer of Elowen's shares represented a major development. Her ownership had carried substantial voting influence within Varelli Dynamics. By placing those shares inside an independent trust, she had introduced a new authority that would now participate in strategic decisions. Some investors viewed the move positively. They believed an independent trust focused on ethical technology development could strengthen the company's public image and reinforce long-term responsibility. Others appeared cautious. Any change in governance required careful evaluation. Still, one fact remained clear to everyone in the room. The leadership structure of Varelli Dynamics had just shifted in a way no one expected. As reporters began sending breaking updates to their newsrooms, the announcement quickly spread beyond the conference hall. Within hours, the technology industry would begin discussing the bold decision made by Kalin Varelli's own wife. While the audience processed the announcement, Kalin remained standing near the stage. Outwardly, he maintained the same composed demeanor he had shown throughout the conference. Years of leadership had trained him to control his reactions in public environments. Inside, however, he understood the full significance of what had just happened. Elowen's shares had always represented one of the largest ownership positions inside the company. Until that moment, he believed their partnership meant those shares would remain aligned with his leadership. Now the voting authority connected to those shares belonged to an independent board operating under the new trust. The shift did not remove him as chief executive, but it limited his ability to guide certain decisions without broader approval. For the first time since founding the company, Kalin realized that control over Varelli Dynamics no longer rested solely in his hands. He glanced toward the hallway where Elowen had exited moments earlier. Her calm announcement had carried no anger, yet the message behind it was unmistakable. Trust, once broken, carried consequences that extended far beyond private relationships. By the end of the conference session, quiet speculation had already begun moving through the crowd. Journalists spoke with analysts while preparing articles explaining the sudden shift in ownership. Some reporters wondered whether the change reflected a deeper disagreement within the company's leadership. Others speculated about the motivations behind Elowen's decision. Several investors recalled how carefully she had spoken about integrity and accountability during her announcement. Although she never mentioned personal matters, the tone of her message suggested something more complex than a simple financial adjustment. As the conference continued, guests exchanged theories during private conversations. Why had the transfer happened so suddenly? Why had Kaylin appeared surprised? Why had Elowen chosen such a public moment to reveal the decision? Within hours, the story spread beyond the conference hall. Technology news outlets began publishing updates describing the governance change at Varelli Dynamics. Industry analysts debated the potential effects on the company's future, and within certain private circles, whispers began forming about possible tensions inside the Varelli household. None of the rumors contained clear answers, but the questions continued growing. Among the many people affected by the unfolding situation, Talia soon faced consequences she had never expected. In the days following the conference, several marketing firms and corporate clients quietly reevaluated their partnerships. Talia's reputation had always relied on trust and professional relationships. Many companies hired her because they believed she maintained strong integrity while representing their brands. But as rumors about internal conflicts surrounding Varelli Dynamics circulated, her name began appearing within those conversations. Some investors remembered seeing her frequently at company events. Others noticed how closely she had worked with Kaylin during marketing discussions connected to the company's public messaging. Although no public accusations were made, several corporate partners chose to distance themselves from potential controversy. Projects she once expected to secure suddenly moved in different directions. New opportunities became less certain. The professional world she once navigated easily began feeling noticeably colder. For someone who built a career on reputation and influence, even quiet suspicion carried significant weight. As weeks passed, the ripple effects from the conference continued shaping the company's relationships. Several corporate partners contacted Varelli Dynamics, requesting clarification about the new governance structure created by the trust. Most of these conversations remained professional. Companies wanted reassurance that research projects and product development schedules would continue without disruption. Still, some partners chose to adopt a cautious approach. They waited before committing to new agreements until the long-term impact of the ownership change became clearer. Investors monitored the situation closely as well. Financial analysts studied how the trust's voting authority might influence future leadership decisions inside the company. For Kaylin, these developments served as a constant reminder of the moment Elowen stepped onto the stage. Her decision had not destroyed the company, but it had changed the landscape surrounding it. And within private boardroom discussions across Silicon Valley, one lesson quietly circulated among business leaders. Integrity within personal relationships often carries consequences that extend into professional life. The evening sky carried soft golden light as Elowen's car approached the Varelli estate once again. The same long private road curved through the hills, leading toward the home that once represented the beginning of her marriage. She had traveled this road countless times before, often returning from charity events or quiet weekends away. This time felt different. The house stood exactly as it always had. Glass walls reflected the fading sunlight, while the surrounding valley stretched calmly into the distance. From the outside, nothing about the estate suggested that the life built inside it had changed. Elowen stepped out of the car and paused briefly before walking toward the entrance. Memories filled her thoughts. The first day she moved into the house after their wedding. The evenings she and Kaylin spent talking on the terrace. The quiet mornings when she watched the sunrise across the hills. Those moments once symbolized trust and partnership. Now they felt like chapters from another life. She entered the house calmly. Inside, the familiar silence greeted her. This visit carried a single purpose: to close the final chapter of her marriage with dignity and clarity. Kaylin waited in the living room when Elowen entered. The moment he saw her, his expression shifted from tension to quiet relief. Since the conference announcement, he had hoped for an opportunity to speak with her privately. "Elowen," he said softly as she stepped into the room. For a moment, neither of them moved. The distance between them carried more meaning than any words spoken. Kaylin finally stepped forward. "I know I should have spoken to you sooner," he said. "I should have told you the truth." His voice carried regret. For the first time since the events began unfolding, the confident executive who addressed investors with certainty now looked uncertain. "I made a mistake," he continued. "A serious one." The words hung quietly in the room. Kaylin had built his career around discipline and control. Admitting failure did not come easily to him, but now the consequences of his choices stood clearly in front of him. He looked at Elowen with sincere remorse. "I am sorry," he said. The apology sounded genuine, yet both of them understood that some actions changed relationships in ways that apologies alone could never repair. After the apology, Kalen tried to explain how everything had happened. He spoke about the pressure of leading a company that had grown faster than anyone expected. Investors demanded constant progress. Competitors watched every move his team made. The responsibility sometimes left him feeling isolated. Talia understood the business side of things, he said carefully. We spent time discussing strategy and marketing ideas. At first it was just work. He paused before continuing. The lines blurred slowly. Kalen admitted that he had never planned to betray Elowen's trust, but moments of weakness and poor judgment had allowed the situation to develop further than it should have. He spoke about regret, about realizing too late how much he had risked. Throughout his explanation, Elowen listened quietly. Her expression remained calm, though the weight of his words remained clear. Kalen hoped that honesty might create a chance for forgiveness. But even as he spoke, he sensed that the distance between them had already become too great. When Kalen finished speaking, the room fell silent again. Elowen looked at him steadily before responding. I understand the pressure you carry, she said gently. Her voice carried no anger. I have always understood that part of your life. She paused briefly before continuing. But pressure does not change the meaning of trust. Kalen lowered his eyes slightly. Elowen stepped closer to the window overlooking the valley before speaking again. Marriage is built on honesty, she said calmly. Not perfection, but honesty. She turned back toward him. When that honesty disappears, the foundation weakens. Her words were measured and thoughtful. She did not accuse him. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she simply acknowledged the truth both of them now understood. Trust, once broken, rarely returns to the same place it once held. For Elowen, clarity mattered more than anger. After a moment of quiet reflection, Elowen looked down at her hand. The ring Kalen had placed there during their proposal in Monterey still rested on her finger. For a few seconds she studied it silently. That ring once represented hope, commitment, and the promise of a shared future. Now it symbolized a chapter that had reached its end. Elowen slowly removed the ring and placed it gently on the table beside them. The gesture carried more meaning than any argument could have expressed. Kalen watched the moment unfold with quiet understanding. Elowen met his gaze one final time. Trust builds a life, she said softly. But once it is broken, the same foundation cannot hold the same weight. Her voice remained steady. I wish you well, Kalen. With that, she turned toward the door. She walked out of the estate with the same dignity she had carried throughout every step of the situation. Behind her, the house remained silent, and the marriage that once began with trust had finally reached its end. Several months after leaving the Varelli estate, Elowen chose a different environment to begin the next chapter of her life. She relocated to a quiet coastal town along the California shoreline, a place far removed from the constant activity of Silicon Valley boardrooms and corporate gatherings. The town carried a peaceful rhythm. Fishing boats returned each morning with the tide. Small cafes opened their doors to locals who greeted each other by name. Waves rolled steadily across the shore, creating a calming background sound that filled the air day and night. Elowen rented a modest home overlooking the ocean. It was smaller than the estate she once lived in, but it offered something she valued far more: peace. Each morning she walked along the shoreline while the early sun rose above the water. The quiet environment allowed her mind to settle after the difficult months she had endured. For the first time in a long while, she felt fully in control of her direction. Her life no longer revolved around the expectations of corporate success or social attention. Instead, she focused on building something meaningful, and the foundation she created through the ethical technology trust would soon become the center of that new purpose. The independent trust Elowen established during the investor conference quickly grew into a powerful force within the technology community. Its mission remained clear: support innovation guided by responsibility. Working with a carefully selected board of educators and engineers, Elowen expanded the foundation's programs across several states. Funding from the trust supported research grants for universities developing technology focused on safety and accessibility. Scholarship programs opened opportunities for students who previously lacked resources to pursue advanced engineering education. Workshops connected experienced researchers with young innovators, eager to explore new ideas. Eowyn remained personally involved in each initiative. She visited schools and research centers, speaking directly with students about the importance of integrity within scientific progress. Her message remained simple but powerful. Technology should serve people, not replace them. The trust soon gained recognition from universities and nonprofit organizations across the country. Many experts praised the program as an example of how wealth could create positive long-term change when guided by thoughtful leadership. For Eowyn, the foundation represented more than a professional achievement. It symbolized the transformation of pain into purpose. One of the most rewarding aspects of Eowyn's new work came from meeting the students whose lives the trust supported. Many of them came from communities where advanced science programs rarely existed. For these young innovators, the opportunity to study robotics, engineering, and software development opened possibilities they had never imagined. Eowyn attended several workshops where students presented early prototypes of machines designed to solve practical problems. Some built robotic tools that could assist farmers in difficult environments. Others designed devices to help people with physical limitations move more freely. Watching their enthusiasm reminded Eowyn why ethical innovation mattered so deeply. She often encouraged them to pursue both intelligence and responsibility in their work. Skill creates invention, she told them during one workshop, but character determines how that invention affects the world. Her words carried genuine experience. Many students later described those conversations as turning points in their careers. Through their work, Eowyn saw the future of technology guided by values she believed were essential, and helping shape that future brought her a sense of fulfillment no personal loss could erase. Throughout every stage of Eowyn's transition, one person remained consistently by her side: Jane. Their friendship, built years earlier during graduate school, had endured both success and hardship. After Eowyn relocated to the coastal town, Jane visited often. Sometimes they spent weekends walking along the shoreline while discussing their careers and future goals. Other times they sat together at small cafes overlooking the harbor, sharing quiet conversations about life. Jane never tried to force Eowyn to revisit painful memories. Instead, she offered steady support and honest companionship. Eowyn appreciated that loyalty deeply. During one of their walks along the beach, Eowyn paused and looked out across the water. "You were right to tell me the truth," she said. Jane shook her head gently. "I only did what a friend should do." That simple exchange reflected the strength of their bond. While betrayal had broken one relationship, it had strengthened another, and Eowyn knew that true friendship often revealed itself most clearly during difficult moments. As time passed, Eowyn began reflecting on everything the experience had taught her. She learned that betrayal often revealed the true character of the people involved, but it also revealed something important about herself. She had faced deception without losing her integrity. She had chosen clarity instead of revenge, and she had turned a painful chapter into a purpose that now helped countless others. Standing one evening along the coastline, Eowyn watched the sunset spread warm colors across the ocean. The waves continued their steady rhythm, unchanged by the events of any single life. In that moment, she felt a quiet sense of closure. Trust remained fragile. Friendship required loyalty. Love required respect. And when those foundations disappeared, the most powerful decision a person could make was to walk away with dignity. Before this story ends, consider this question. If you found yourself in Eowyn's position, would you respond with anger, or would you choose strength and self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget